Hi, everybody. We're just going to get started in just a minute. There's Toni. Hi, Toni.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you again.
Yeah, I was going to say a long time no see.
Right?
I see everybody's trickling in. Maybe we can give it just a few more seconds.
Sure.
For everyone who's coming on, we're just going to give it one more minute and then we'll get started. It's my first Instagram live. Very exciting.
Mine too.
Oh, okay. I know our organizations are social media savvy. Maybe not everyone in them, but we're learning. We're getting it.
We're in good hands.
Well, all right, I see people are coming in. All right. I have 6:01. Toni, what do you think?
It's up to you. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Hi, everyone. My name's Belle Yoeli. I'm AJC American Jewish Committee Chief Innovation Officer and Chief of Staff. And before I turn it over to Toni to introduce herself, we're just going to kick things off very quickly. We are finishing up Black Jewish Unity Week, a week-long initiative of AJC and the National Urban League, and very exciting to be finishing it up here for this forward-thinking future conversation on forward-thinking younger platforms such as Instagram, because really this is about the future and engaging young people in this very important topic of Black Jewish unity and Black Jewish relations. And we're just very excited to be having this conversation. And Toni, I'm going to turn it over to you, but I just want to say we're only going to do this for 20 minutes and it's just the tip of the iceberg. And we decided yesterday in our pre-chat that we want this conversation to model really what we think conversations around the country should look like when it comes to Black Jewish relations. So it's just the tip of the iceberg. And we're looking forward to continuing the conversation here and both afterwards. So I'll turn it to Toni to introduce herself.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll leave them wanting more with our short conversation. But good evening, everyone. I'm Toni Wiley. I'm the Director of Advocacy at the National Urban League. And I am very excited to join my new pal, Belle, tonight to discuss the importance of continuing the legacy of Black and Jewish unity and the role each of us can play in doing just that. As Belle mentioned, prior to tonight's event, she and I had the opportunity to just chat as young women who are working in justice and just liberation in our respective communities and our organizations. And really, we had a discussion about the challenges and the opportunities and our hopes for this partnership. And tonight, as she said, it will be a continuation of these conversations and hopefully something that you can use as young and young at heart people in our organizations to build and maintain this bridge to Black and Jewish equality and rights and liberation in this country and this world. So, Belle, I'm going to go ahead and put you on the spot first tonight. So I know, like everyone else, you've seen the recent events impacting the Black community in particular, the police killing of George Floyd, which really shook us all to our core, the subsequent unrest that we saw as a response to that killing in all of our urban communities, as well as and then we saw more police killings, unfortunately. And then on top of that, we have this COVID-19 pandemic and its ravishing toll on the Black community. Considering all that's going on, how do you, as a Jewish person or as the Jewish community, show up as an ally in this moment?
Thank you, Toni. I love being put on the spot first. What an intense question, right? And it's something that I struggle with as an individual every day. And it's something that I think, anyone who cares about what's happening in this particular subject and in our country now more broadly is thinking about. And I know AJC as an organization has been thinking about it and, trying to be active, very active as much as we can on this issue. To me, it starts with really what this week has been about, which being a good ally means showing up, speaking out, and lifting each other up. It's it's a responsibility. We don't have a choice. And it's something, unfortunately, just in my time at AJC alone, I've seen with different partners and different allies that we work with. Being an ally means showing up and speaking out. And I've seen it time and time again when different communities have come under attack in a variety of different circumstances. That being the number one important thing, recognizing what's happening and speaking out, and trying to lift each other up. I mean, I think this country is having a moment, a really intense moment, and we've talked about it this week, an awakening of our national consciousness about what the search for racial justice really means, and how I've seen as an American Jew, who of course we have our own struggles and our own challenges, especially over the past recent years, that the only thing that makes a difference is when people stand by us and we lift each other up. And I think that's what we all feel right now about what's happening to Black Americans. I mean, you and I spoke yesterday about how I can't possibly understand to a certain degree what it means to fear for my life. You know, if someone's feeling that way when they get pulled over by a police officer. And obviously this is all so complicated, but trying to get into someone else's shoes and to understand and have a conversation to really educate ourselves, education, awareness. I remember even thinking to myself, and I said to you after the murder of George Floyd, you know, this like self-evaluation of how many Black friends do I have, and how many people do I know, and or colleagues or partners and interlocutors that I can reach out and not only do I need to check on them, but make sure that I understand what is happening. And you know, you can think that you're the most informed person in the world. You read the news and whatever it might be. We're not. We can only experience and empathize so much. So it's reaching out, it's speaking out, it's understanding, it's educating. And when we can, working together to try to get something done. I know something that came up this week was the No Hate Act in Congress. And that's one initiative that we both of our organizations have worked on and can work on together. What that relates specifically to hate crimes, and you can look it up online to try and get something done nationally, legislatively. And there are several initiatives like that. It also means working locally and partnering with local community, our two organizations and affiliates together around the country. This can happen in so many different ways, and it has to happen and take place on different levels. But to me, it's simply about, bottom line, showing up. And the last thing I'll say before asking you really the same question is, you know, you said this, I'm going to steal your line and give you credit. You said that allyship doesn't mean, it's not always 50-50. And Have been thinking about that ever since you said that, because certain communities, the Jewish community, as I said, was having a moment. We have moments all the time, but I remember, you know, during the Pittsburgh shooting, and people rallied around the Jewish community and said, we will not stand for this, and how important that was to us, and other high profile anti-Semitic incidents. And right now we might not have the spotlight, but we don't need to, we don't want to. You know, you want to come to the community that's most in need, and it's okay, and it's important to recognize that right now the Black community, Black Americans, the Black community, it's a loaded term. We're not all one monolithic community, and we have to be there, and we have to and recognize, to show up in this moment and recognize what's happening. So I know I said a lot. To me, it's multifaceted, but that's really everything that comes to mind when I think about allyship in this moment. Tell me what you think.
Well, I certainly agree with you, and I appreciate especially just the reaching out, just to see how you're doing. If you have a friend who is being impacted directly or indirectly by what's going on, showing up, reaching out means so much, because honestly, Black Americans have been had an onslaught of different pandemics, as we say, throughout this year. And we're honestly just tired. And to hear that we have support, and to hear that other people see that we're struggling means a lot. But I will say, you know, how do I show up even in this time, being a member of a community that is really being impacted by, you know, race relations, by a healthcare crisis. I think, as you said, it's very much like a friendship. You want to be supportive even as you go through your own trials. But sometimes, due to circumstances, your capacity, your focus, your energy may not allow you to have that 50-50%, you know, partnership, as we talked about. In the social justice space, as you said so eloquently, you know, we're not always going to be impacted on the same level at the same time. And so sometimes one of those partners is going to get hit harder and more frequently. And I truly, truly, truly appreciate your sensitivity to that, because that means the world to someone who is going through it. But I do think there are ways that we can continue to show up for our Jewish allies, even as we work to end racism in the Black community. And that is by simply being present and sharing information, making sure that we are aware of incidents and policies impacting the Jewish community, especially locally, and that we elevate those issues within our own networks and our own spheres of influence. This may be as simple as featuring an article in our newsletters or on our websites, issuing joint press releases, which we can do nationally and locally. We can also share action alerts to Congress and local elected officials. We can support all kinds of legislation locally and nationally, like the No Hate Act, George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which the National Urban League is really trying to get passed in Congress, has an anti-lynching clause, which is a hate crime portion. So that impacts not only Black Americans, but people who are being targeted for religious and other LGBTQ and other reasons. So there are definitely ways that we can continue to partner even as we work within our own communities. Another thing that we can do is allow our platforms to be used by our allies. So this is a perfect example of what we could do more often. And a lot of our local affiliates and a lot of our young professional auxiliaries have their own Instagram and Facebook pages, and they could definitely lend their platforms to local Jewish community members who need a platform in our community. So that's a really easy way that we can show our solidarity and support using technology and definitely maintaining social distance. And finally, one thing I would say that we can do, and I know that both of our organizations are really doing, is actively encourage civic participation. We have a census engagement campaign that we're doing right now for the Urban League called Make Black Count. We also have Get Out the Vote initiatives, Reclaim Our Vote, that empowers all marginalized people to lift their voices and be heard through their ballot, through being counted in the census. And then this ensures that we have laws and resources available to protect the rights of all people. So in doing this, in doing just being basically civically engaged and encouraging that and providing avenues for that.
For everyone who was watching, I am so sorry about that. Toni, I lost power, my friend. The Wi-Fi was gone. I'm so sorry. Like, what a COVID problem to have. Anyway, I don't know where you got cut off, so I want to I want to let you finish up what you were saying, and maybe you go back and repeat a little bit. I'm so sorry to our viewers again for those tuning in. We lost power. Please.
I think I finished my my answer about how we show up for the Jewish community. So it's your time to put me back on the spot.
Okay. Well, Toni, let me just say, you said you were speaking so eloquently and I think laid out so nicely many different options for showing up as allies. And again, for anyone who's just tuning in or coming back, we lost power, COVID times. It's not the first time it's happened to me, but apologies for those who got cut out. Toni, you know, in thinking about all the ways that we can be allies, I know you and I had discussed that there are challenges, you know, and to build, you know, more perfect relations between the Black and Jewish community, we also have to talk about what is it that keeps us from being unified. I wanted to start by asking you, to have this very honest conversation. What are the things that you think that are challenges to relations between Blacks and Jews, and perhaps how we can, and you can say some and I can answer it, and we'll do vice versa. I know how we can address some of those challenges.
I think, a lot of goes back to what you said initially about being monolithic and thinking communities are monolithic. I think that's one of the really important things that we have to remember that we are not monoliths, and sometimes the opinions of a few people who are very vocal in their opinions do not represent the entirety of a community. That's the first thing I think we really need to keep in mind. But I do feel that there are some people who, given the current environment in this country, there may be a perceived white privilege or affluence that would lead to a lack of understanding for the particular experience of discrimination that Black Americans have encountered in this country due to just our skin color. And even though we have similar histories of systematic oppression against our people, that's one thing that I think that a lot of people may struggle with. And from the conversations that I've had, very candid conversations, it's like, well, how do they relate to Black people? Because, even though they are persecuted or have been persecuted for their religious purposes or their religious practices, you know, they are perceived in this country as white, and that's a privilege. And that's a privilege that we can't afford ourselves at this moment. So I think that's one of the things that I think could be a challenge to our unity and our growing partnership. But I will say that, again, that's not always the case. That's just some views that I've heard. So what is your take on that, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on this a little bit. I think it's not only, sometimes it's that you simply can't relate or you can't like fully understand the experience. I think, I can only speak from the Jewish perspective. And, as I said before, Jews are not all the same. And I'll say it very personally, like I'm a Jew, an American Jew, and I happen to be white. And I have arguments with colleagues. Do we identify as white? Do we identify as Jewish? But in a way, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's about perception. But there are many Jews that do not look like me and have different shades of skin and different backgrounds and are from the Middle East or other places or Africa and other places, and take personal offense when they are told that like they're put in this group of like, oh, all Jews are white and privileged. And we can understand, I personally rationally can understand that in the United States, like many Jews have done very well, and I can understand without playing into stereotypes, like that just happens to be true. We're a small but mighty community we make plenty of noise, and I can understand some people might say, oh, like they're part of the problem. But I think it's too easy to go there, and I don't think that the majority of voices feel that way. So I think you're right. It's about not getting focused on the few voices that, even if they make a lot of noise, that try to divide us, and rather saying that by and large, both communities know, not only or should know, recognize our shared history and shared experience, and recognize that it's also slightly different. And the experience of Black Americans is not the same as the experience of Jewish Americans, and that's okay. And it's not as we discussed, some type of victim competition. Rather, it's understanding the experience, recognizing the challenges, and saying, I need to understand and get into this person's shoes, and so that they can understand and get into my shoes. And I think part of it also is in both communities, and in any community where we're talking about allyship, recognizing that there are prejudices. There is racism in the Jewish community, and I'm sure there's anti-Semitism in the Black community, but that doesn't necessarily, first of all, it doesn't always necessarily come from the worst place. Sometimes people just are misinformed and are not educated, and we need to reach out. And like you said, when one community is in panic mode, and maybe that's not the best time to say, hey, we need to focus on anti-Semitism, but we can still call it, and pay attention to it. But we're focusing on our own internal issues at the moment. But it goes both ways, and it's educating and calling out, and also understanding when you're not going to win, or when someone is so problematic that they cannot be convinced, and isolating that person and drowning out that voice as much as possible, because we want to lift up the voices that know by an overall what the shared experience is, how we can work together and not get caught up in the fewer voices that are really trying to sow division. And it's not just a Black Jewish issue, but I think in this relationship it's particularly important because there is a shared history and a shared experience that I think some communities don't even have. So it's a unique opportunity. That was I went on too long. But I mean, I think, are there other challenges I can say? I'm curious for your thoughts. I know we talked about this a little bit yesterday. For American Jews, there was, at least in the circles that I work in, that I've been in, there was this kind of moment when Black Lives Matter emerged, where there were conversations about Israel and language and the platform that some people perceived to be anti-Israel. Israel, for a large portion of the American Jewish community, being a very important topic. And there was a feeling by some, how can I support, I support racial justice and I want to support this movement for change. But what do I do if I feel that there's anti-Semitism, or what do I do if I feel that, it means that I have to check my pro-Israel identity at the door? And you had some really invaluable insight about that. So I'd love to hear, how do you speak to the Jewish community when they say, we want to be an ally, but there seems to be, maybe like check boxes that we have to get through, and that shouldn't be the case.
I think, definitely, you made a point earlier about, drowning out those voices that, may not be representative of the community as a whole. I would pivot to say I wouldn't drown out those voices. I would definitely try to have more personal interactions with people like we're having right now, because those voices are a part of our community. We can't drown them out because they are a part of who we are. But I do believe that with education and by having one-on-one discussions and having brave conversations like we were fortunate to have and continue to have today, that we can get through a lot of those issues. It is difficult. Social justice is not, a linear thing. It is not, black and white, and there are lots of complicated issues throughout. And as Black people, we like to stand in solidarity with people of color because we know people of color across this world are discriminated against. So, sometimes it's not just people who are misinformed, but they may not understand the complexities of things that are going on. And that's where it's important that we have one-on-one conversations, that we are transparent, that we are brave in our conversations. Another thing I think that contributes sometimes to our formation of a unified front in this space is not appreciating our history. We talk a lot today about moving forward and the now, but and we know history was probably no one's favorite subject in school, but history speaks volumes about the roles that each of our communities have played in the rights of the other. Of course, we know in 1964, during what's called Freedom Summer, 3 Jewish freedom riders were murdered in Mississippi for standing for the civil and the voting rights of Black Americans. We have lost a huge civil rights icon, John Lewis, just recently. But he was also a very great proponent of Jewish liberation across the world. He spoke in 1987 about Jewish liberation in the Soviet Union, and I'm sure he's done countless other acts in support of the Jewish community. And that might not be known by a lot of people in our community, in our Black community, that John Lewis was also a very staunch proponent of Jewish liberation. So I think that just making sure that, sometimes it's hard when you couple, again, our current political climate, we look at white privilege, and then there's this, undercurrent of distrust. We have a history of working together. We have a history of putting our bodies and our lives and using our platforms to support each other. And so we should build on that history to strengthen our unity and make it even better for the next generation.
Yeah, I so agree. And I just want to clarify in terms of drowning out the voices. I mean, the voices that we've tried to engage and won't after having the conversations and and won't, there's always worth engaging. We believe that at AJC very firmly. It's always worth trying and always worth having the conversation. Um,
Absolutely.
and I think, as we've discussed, like some of the complexities, no matter the complexity of any situation, whether it's the Israel single point that I just mentioned or others, should never prevent, us from seeing the bigger picture and the overall relationship. And it's having conversations and getting through those tough conversations that makes the relationship that much stronger. Um,
Mhm.
since Toni, I know you mentioned John Lewis, and I know you wanted to talk about kind of moving forward, what's the next thing we can do. So I'll turn it back to you.
So yeah, John Lewis, of course, is a larger than life figure in both of our communities, and that's something we should both be very proud of and thank him for opening so many doors for both communities. So Belle, as young Black and Jewish people, how do we move this partnership forward into the 21st century and beyond, in your opinion? How do we continue to talk with our feet, as John Lewis said, and get into good trouble?
Such an important question. I actually think we covered a lot of it already. But to me, what really matters in this conversation is young people leading the way, because it's about, for those of us either listening or who will listen, we have to know our history to be able to move the conversation forward. But like we've discussed, you can't stay in the history. We have to be able to do the work every day. And what I personally would like to see through all the different platforms that you outlined and the ways to engage and get involved is to start first and foremost with relationship building. And I know around the country, there is work being done together. There's always more that we can do. And it starts by taking self-stock, like I tried to explain that I had done before, and say, who do I know and who do I not know? Who do I need to know? Who do I need to reach out to? And reach out and have this conversation and say, talk to me about what's going on. I want to learn more. Here's what I'm thinking of. Here's what my community is dealing with. Um, I'd love to understand more and see what we can do together. And that can start in one-on-one, friend to friend, stranger to stranger conversations. It can
Mhm.
also be done through institutions like AJC and the National Urban League. I think the first step is relationship building. The second step is seeing what we can do together, and that's either building off of the national legislation conversation or local community events. And when it comes back to is like in times of need, not only being proactive, not just responsive in the times of need, but being proactive and do the work, because that inevitably will get us into good trouble. Do the work of trying to build the relationship and speaking out, not just for the Black Jewish relationship, but for all communities who are struggling in this very divisive moment in our country. And to say that we're seeking a better future, whether it's racial justice, the end of anti Semitism, where we can live up to the creed that is what the American experience is all about. So it's very big and it can be overwhelming, but I think it's really starting small and just initiating those relationships and building on them once they are built. To me, that's where it starts. And I turn it back to you for your thoughts.
Well, I will just say I couldn't add any more to that. But I will just say Black people, Jewish people, American people, go vote. Please go vote. That will help everybody out immensely. If your voice is heard, your ballot is cast. I will just add that, both of our communities have overcome and are still fighting so many battles. And being allies, being accomplices, being friends also means being intentional with our self care, reminding each other of that. And as you spoke of earlier, just taking up the mantle for the other party when necessary, so they can practice self care. Pick up the phone. Don't be afraid to reach out and say, what can I do to help? How can I support? What can I take off your plate as your community heals from whatever adversity it is going through? And I'm sure, and I hope it's not the case, but if it happens during this time where we're fighting and there's a moment in the Jewish community that we would do the same thing. We would pick up the phone. we will see how can we help, how can we support, and how can we help you practice self-care so you can continue this necessary fight for all of our liberation and all of our equal rights in this country. I think self-care is so revolutionary, y'all. You gotta make sure that you do it. We can't do what we do, even though we're young and we think we can do everything. Self-care is a form of activism, and I encourage everybody to practice it.
Well, sorry, keep going. I didn't know you're done.
No, go ahead, Bill.
I was gonna say, I think that's our call to action, is practice self-care. No, but in all seriousness, I think we've laid out, the groundwork for how to get things started here. And it's just a very tip of the iceberg. And I hope a good model of the conversation. Toni, I've so enjoyed getting to know you and talking to you over the past few days.
You as well.
There's a lot of work to do. We hope that
Mhm.
everyone watching will take this conversation and apply it at home, wherever you are, hopefully staying safe and continue to stay safe. I want to thank the entire National Urban League team for being such incredible partners during Black Jewish Unity Week. It's been a pleasure for AJC to partner with you, and I think we've put on some great programs throughout the week, and I encourage everyone to go look them up if you haven't seen them, and watch them, because they were inspiring. On the AJC website, and also just any Google search, you'll find the programs, Black Jewish Unity Week. And like I said, the work does not end here. There's lots to do. And I'm personally looking forward to working with Toni and everyone at the Urban League to continue in this Black Jewish unity and partnership moving forward. And Toni, I want to give you the last word.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. And I want to echo how wonderful it has been to get to know you. And I just love your spirit and your sensitivity to what's going on. And I look forward to a very long-lasting partnership with you, building a friendship and an accompliceship with you, as well as the great people at the AJC. It's been amazing to work with you this week. I will just add one last thing. I encourage you to reach out and be intentional. That's your homework for today. The National Urban League Young Professional has chapters all over the country. And if you are a Jewish person and you want to connect with someone in the National Urban League Young Professionals, you can reach us at nulyp.org. If you want to learn more about the National Urban League, you can reach us at nul.org. And I'll let you do your search engines and, and handles as well.
I don't have to, because if you're on the AJC Instagram, you know that it is run by our young leadership team. We have AJC Access, our young professional division. They're very active here on Instagram. And of course, anything about AJC on our website, ajc.org, and AJC Global on Twitter, on Facebook. You can't miss us. We're too loud and I know that Urban League too is everywhere on the internet and on social media, as we have to be. So really thank you, and wishing everybody a good night, and stay safe and healthy.
Be safe, everyone. Bye.
Bye.